Hey guys, in this video we're going to be taking a closer look at the 24mm f1.4 from Sigma. So for the past couple months, I have been testing out the Sigma 24mm f1.4. This is in the art lens, the art series of the Sigma lenses. And I've been mostly doing portraiture with it, but the one thing that I've been really excited to try out is a little bit of astrophotography and see how it handles stars. So some of you may have seen one of my old videos where I reviewed the Canon 24mm lens for astrophotography, and it suffered really bad chroma distortion. It did really poorly with chroma distortion to the point where the images just weren't usable if you're pointing it at the night sky. And that led me to purchase, this is the Rokinon 24mm lens. This is a fairly affordable lens as far as lenses go. It's manual everything, meaning it has no autofocus. You have to actually set your aperture ring. And this has kind of been, what's nice about it is that it doesn't suffer from the chroma distortion that the much more expensive Canon L series does. So it's actually better for night photography for that reason. It's not terribly sharp. It's not autofocus. It really makes it a one-trick pony. Like I only use this at nighttime when I'm photographing the Milky Way. So I was really interested to see not only how this was with portraiture, but to see how it does with the night sky. So let's take a look at a few images and I'll show you what I think. So for portraiture, it's really nice. It's kind of interesting to get both a shallow depth of field and to get that kind of wider perspective. I use the 50mm from Sigma pretty often, and I'm used to that nice shallow depth of field when you're shooting at 1.4. But what I'm not used to is getting so much of the landscape in the shot, you know, shooting with that wider perspective with that shallow depth of field. I really liked it for that. It's very sharp once you stop it down. Wide open, it's definitely not as sharp as the 50mm from Sigma. But if you look at the DxO mark, you find that it's actually rated sharper, at least, you know, at its peak sharpness. It's just sharper than my 16-35 version 3. It's sharper than the Canon L series. It's a very sharp lens, but wide open, it's pretty sharp. It's definitely usable wide open, but it's not like tack sharp like the 50mm is. One thing I did run into problem-wise with this lens, just like the 50mm, and I think that this is just kind of a fast prime problem, but if I had any kind of backlight going on, if I was shooting into the sun and getting that kind of glowy look, it definitely struggled with autofocus. Not so much the speed, but the accuracy. There was shots that were just like way out of focus. And I know that my focus point was right. I'm a professional. I do this all the time, almost every day, but I would find myself having to block the sun with my hand, get focus, and then move my left hand out of the frame just so I could make sure that it was getting accurate focus. And it was mostly a problem in difficult focusing situations like dealing with backlight, which is when a portrait photographer is doing most of their photography is, you know, shooting into the sun. But I did really like it for portraits. A lot of the portraits that I got, I'm very happy with. It's got a very unique look. So I also took it to some weddings, and I was really thinking that wedding receptions would be a great time to use this lens, like during, you know, the dancing, because I like to shoot wide and get kind of close. But if I could get that shallow depth of field and let in more light, I would like that as well. But I did find that I was having lots of focusing issues in dark reception type settings, and I was just getting much more consistent results with my 16-35 in those situations. So let's move on to landscape photography. I really didn't use it for very much landscape photography because I like the versatility of having a zoom lens. My 16-35 is pretty much my go-to when I'm shooting landscape. But for night photography, I I was excited about this lens, and I only got an opportunity to use it a couple times. We have this shot here, this Nick selfie, where, you know, it was a foggy day, so you can't really judge sharpness too harshly. But you can see that there is that tiny bit of coma distortion. That's that UFO shaped star where you start getting interesting shapes in your stars. There's a little bit of that introduced in this. And then over here in this aurora shot, you can see that the mountain itself is nicely sharp and the stars are looking pretty good, although we are still seeing a little bit of that coma distortion. If we compared that to the 16-35 version of the same scene, you can see that it doesn't have nearly as much coma distortion. But having said that, I don't feel like it's, you know, that bad. It's definitely not nearly as bad as the Canon one. I don't know that I would buy this lens just for astrophotography, but if you are a portrait photographer and you're looking for a good portrait lens, in addition to the benefits of shooting this at night, I think it's a good lens for that. It's definitely usable at night. I think it's sharper than the Rokinon for sure. It's definitely sharper, but the coma distortion is worse than the Rokinon. But the added benefit of having autofocus that actually works, the added benefit of being able to, you know, control your aperture like you're used to, that is definitely worth something. And I think that if I had my choice between the Rokinon and the Sigma, I would definitely go with the Sigma. Another benefit of the Art series lens is that it's built well. This actually survived. I don't know if, yeah, here's the lens hood. It actually survived a fall from, I would say, probably 4 feet. Tripod tipped over in the wind in Iceland and broke the lens hood, but the lens survives. It doesn't even have a mark on it. These things are built really well. They're built to last. I wouldn't hesitate to buy this if I was in need of a good 24 millimeter lens. I think this is what I would choose if I was starting over. Yeah. So I'm really happy with this lens. I really like how it looks in video. Several of my videos now have been done like when I'm sitting here at my desk. I've been using this 24 millimeter a lot of times because it's kind of cool to get that shallow depth of field. I can use a lower ISO. It's just kind of a unique look. So it's great for video as well. Been very happy with this lens. If you're in the market for a 24 millimeter, it's really hard to beat this guy because the Canon, not as good. Rokinon, definitely not as good. Nikon, I don't know. I don't use Nikon, so I'm not sure. But if you're on the Canon side, this is definitely the best 24 millimeter that there is out there. So hopefully this has been useful. Just a quick look at this lens before I send it back in 2 pieces. Sorry, Sigma. Really liked using this lens though, and I think for astrophotography, it's completely usable. For portrait photography, it's a really unique, cool look when you're shooting with that wide perspective, but shallow depth of field. All right. Thanks guys so much. And we'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.